Hello, patrons, and thank you for joining us for this bonus content for, oh gosh, I never looked this up before I go to say it.
50.
Episode 51.
Oh, no.
Oh, 51? Really?
51.
I thought it was
yeah.
50.
No,
This is
last
51.
time was 50.
It's so hard to keep track because there's like numbers of books and verses and
Right.
chapters,
Yeah.
Lots of
and
numbers
then also the
involved.
episodes.
Well, all right.
Uh,
We're past 50.
51, yeah, which means next time will be 52, which is like kind of like a year's worth of episodes. We recorded more. We recorded them twice a week for the first
yeah, that's
couple
true.
months.
We're close. We
true.
started the podcast in July. It launched in July, so
Yeah, so
approaching on a year pretty soon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
well, that's exciting.
Yeah.
Okay, I would like to talk to y'all about the Hebrew calendar.
Okay.
'Cause it's something I only knew like a little bit about before. And you also have some stuff to share.
Yeah, a little bit.
You got a little bit of stuff. What
Little bit.
are you talking about?
Talking about Sukkot.
Okay, about the holiday.
Yes, about the holiday.
The booth
Booths,
living.
The booths.
The
yeah.
booth.
Yeah.
Hashtag booth life.
Uh-huh.
And I'm talking about Sabbath or Shabbat.
Yes.
Nice. Okay, cool. They're all kind of related then.
Yeah.
Okay, so how much do you know about the Hebrew calendar?
Very little.
What do you know?
All I know is that it changes every single year
Uh-huh.
when we try to apply it to the Gregorian calendar.
Right.
That's all I know.
Right. Emily, do you know like anything about it?
Changes.
Okay, cool.
Can't
All
copy
right.
my answer, Emily.
Yeah.
Well, that's all I know about it. It's not a copy, it's a truth.
Well, okay, so the first thing is that the Hebrew calendar is a type of calendar called a lunisolar calendar.
Huh.
And
So both sun and moon.
exactly. So what it means is that it's both based off of the moon, like months are based off of the moon, but it also is meant to line up with the solar year,
Huh.
Okay.
which doesn't line up so nicely with the lunar year,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
So it's a calendar that's based around both of those things. So here's how it works. Basically, there are 12 months, usually, and each month starts at the new moon.
Okay.
And
yeah.
what's cool is back in the day, the rule was that the month, like you had to have two different independent people state that they had spotted the new moon, and that's when you could
It
be
couldn't
like,
be just
this
one
is-
absurd person
Right?
making up lies about
Right?
the new moon.
yeah, so like your village or your settlement or whatever would have to have like two different independent people have seen
Say?
the new moon and agree on it, and that
Well,
They're like,
yeah,
now
I
it's
mean,
a new month.
the
Yeah.
agreement is the thing because a lot of the moons look pretty dang similar. Like
Yeah,
a lot
I
of
guess
the
so,
slivers
yeah.
of the moon.
Yeah,
that's
but
true.
They really have to know what they're looking for.
and if it's cloudy, oof,
yeah, I
you're in
mean, good
trouble.
luck.
Yeah.
Good luck with that.
Anyways, it was kind of fun that it used to be done that way. And I guess we'll get to that in a second. But now it's done with math.
Yes,
Maths.
of course.
Yeah.
Maths, as we say. So
In
yeah,
London,
yeah. Right. It's a maths, yes. And so a lunar month, so like a time for a full moon cycle, takes about 29 and a half days.
Okay.
So the Jewish calendar basically alternates 29 days, 30 days, 29 days, 30 days, 29 days, 30 days is how it works nowadays. But it, would have been based off of like when they spotted
Yes.
that new moon,
Okay.
which essentially ended up the same thing where like it would be 29 to 30 days, right?
Okay.
And so that it kind of stays lined up with the moon. But that will end you up 11 days short of a solar year.
Huh.
Okay.
So what they do is there's a leap month that gets inserted every 2 or 3 years on a 19-year cycle.
Is it only 11 days? Or is it a full...
That's why it's only every 3 years.
I see, 'cause
You got to
it's a
wait
full
till you've
month.
added up
Right.
enough.
Fascinating.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
every 19 years you have 17 leap months
Okay.
that happen every 2 or 3 years. And there's like a
Right.
cycle. It's like on the 3rd year you do one, and the 6th year, but then the 8th year, and then the 11th year. So there's kind of like a pattern to it.
Huh.
But you add this whole extra month, which is just the name of the month before it with a 2 after it.
So like
It's just-
June 2, the
Well, it's-
sequel to June.
The month is Adar. is the name of this
And then it
particular
becomes
month.
a dar too?
And it becomes a dar too.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
I love that. Very
it's cool,
practical.
right? Yeah. Well, speaking of practicality, the days of the week are also just day 1,
Yeah,
day
okay,
2,
yeah.
day
Oh,
3,
really?
up through day 6, and then Shabbat is just rest day.
Shabbat. Okay, got
So,
it.
based off of Genesis, the creation, it's like
right.
it was morning and it was evening. The first day, the second day.
whatever it is,
So they just named them like
I
that.
appreciate that practicality. It's like in Japanese with the naming of months. It's just like month 1, month 2,
Yep.
month 3, month
Yeah.
4, month
Totally.
5. Yes, all the way through the year. There's no
Fascinating.
weird names for the months. It's
Yeah.
just straight up very practical.
Yeah. So some other important things to note here is that the day starts at sunset,
Yes.
which if you have any Jewish friends, you know that that's how that goes. And okay, so what I was trying to figure out is kind of like how, like, where's the beginning of the year and kind of how does it line up with us? And what's kind of interesting I learned is that there's sort of a difference between what's considered by modern day people to be the beginning of the Hebrew calendar versus what's month 1 in what we were just reading. And they're not the same.
Okay.
Yeah. So in what we're reading,
Because they were referring to month 7 often.
right, we talked about month 1 and month 7,
Yeah.
which are, both halfway through the
Yeah.
cycle. So month 1 for biblical purposes is Nisan, Nisan.
Like,
Nissan.
yeah, wow.
Also where you drive your great imported cars. So Nisan is the first month. So that's the one where what's the holiday I'm thinking of? What's the one in Nisan that we just talked about at Passover?
Passover.
When God
Okay.
said, so like, on in the first month on whatever day,
15th,
that's
14th
Passover.
day or something, yeah.
So Passover is the beginning of the biblical year, but the beginning of the civil year is on the 7th month, which is Tishrei.
Okay.
Which is the one where we have Rosh Hashanah, which I'd always heard referred to as like Jewish New Year. But it's
Interesting. That
in
it's
the
in the middle of the
biblical
year.
calendar, it's the middle of the year, but in like the civil Hebrew calendar, it's the beginning of the year. So
Wow.
anyway, that's also to add confusion on
Very
top of
confusing.
confusion. And then the other thing to know, Emily, is that this month 1
Yeah.
that Yahweh was talking about, Nisan, happens in the spring.
Huh.
Right. So it's not even like off by half the year or whatever. It that starts in the spring.
So it's like around my birthday, maybe. My birthday is the first day of spring and vernal equinox.
Okay.
Or
Yeah. So this is like April
not
or
vernal.
April or May.
What is
This
the
is a little bit
Passover and
afterward.
Easter always kind of tend to be close together in the calendar. Yeah.
Yeah. If y'all want something fascinating to read up on the Wikipedia entry for the calculation of Easter.
Oh boy.
The historical stuff behind that is super interesting.
Well, maybe we'll get to that eventually once
Yeah, most likely.
the resurrection occurs.
But for a long time, calculating that was like considered the calculation of the age.
Wow.
Like it was like a big deal
Jeez.
to try to calculate this because they hadn't figured out yet how to know exactly how long a lunar year was.
Yeah.
And so it was based on the stars and the moon and the seasons and everything, trying to like figure out when that would be in the future.
Wow.
Right? Like, how can we make a calendar that's going to predict when Easter is going to be? Because it's relative to the phase of the moon that happens after a certain time. And it's all really interesting.
Wow.
Really fascinating.
And, okay, the last thing that I wanted to share was just that the leap month, too, this before maths were involved, like the two people having to witness the moon, it was based on this criteria of like, it was like when barley sprouts or when the equinox is or some other like sort of agricultural phenomenon, that if 2 of the 3 of those things happened either like, I guess, later than they should have, then that's like the signal that you decide this is the year when we do the leap month.
It sounds like some prophecy, like when the barley sprouts and the third sun dies, on that day you will have the leap year.
Yeah, kind of actually.
Wow,
kind of like
amazing.
that.
All right.
But until they figured out the maths behind it, that's that's how they had to do it. Again, because it was just based on like, we need to make this line back up with the seasonings. Oh yeah, it was the ripeness of barley and the fruit trees and the equinox.
Wow, amazing.
Can I quickly talk about Sabbath
Do
and
it.
Shabbat?
Yeah.
Okay. So I was wondering because I thought they were the same thing, and they kind of are, but it just says the Sabbath is a day of religious observance and abstinence from work kept by Jews from Friday evening to Saturday evening, and by most Christians on Sunday. So
Right.
the thing that I knew about from my Jewish friends was Shabbat. I actually, would go to some Shabbat
There's
ceremonies.
some Shabbat dinners and
Yeah.
things like that.
Yeah, exactly. And I didn't realize, but okay. So here's some basic activities that you have to refrain from on Shabbat. Writing, erasing, and tearing.
Oh, no tearing.
And it
So,
can't
like,
rip up things.
Well, or you can't get those little things in the mail with like the perforated edges and like
See.
So no coupon tearing.
Yeah, exactly. No
Right.
coupon tearing. Business transactions, driving or riding in cars or other vehicles, shopping, using the telephone. So like,
Yeah.
a complete day away from your
Wow.
cellular device.
Right.
Turning on or off anything which uses electricity, including lights, radios, television, computer, air conditioners, and alarm clocks.
Wow.
Mm.
Yeah.
Cooking, baking, or kindling a fire. Gardening and grass mowing, and doing laundry.
Mm.
Okay, so that's... Apparently they're saying in this Shabbat.org that you do things like prepare in advance for Shabbat. So essentially, like, lights which will be needed on Shabbat are turned on before Shabbat, and they're put on an automatic timer. And so the refrigerator can be used, but we have to ensure that it does not have, like, the light on, so the light needs to be disconnected,
Huh.
which is really interesting.
I see.
I'd
So
heard
the
about
idea
that. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then, you can't cook or light a fire, so anything that you need to eat will be cooked before Shabbat and kept warm through special practices, special methods is what it says.
Wait, really? That's just a special method?
It says there's a food preparation on Shabbat for the laws and methods involved, so I didn't read that, but yes.
All right. A whole separate article about that.
Yeah, exactly. So there are various, like, forbidden objects that you can't remove or move around, rather.
Okay.
So stones, plants, flowers in a vase, raw food, such as beans.
Okay. So you can't. All right. So it's like you can't be prepping raw food, I guess.
Yeah.
You shouldn't move it around.
Or
Okay.
an object that has broken and become no longer useful, such as a broken bowl or a button that falls off. Don't you move it.
Wow.
So also, I guess, like not taking out the trash then, like anything that's not
Yeah.
useful still.
Interesting. Valuable objects are those which would be used only for their designated task, for fear of damaging it, like a camera, a crystal decoration, professional tools, a scalpel, electric wiring, important documents, a passport, or a birth certificate.
So you can't interact
them.
with those? Can't move
Yeah,
those.
don't move them.
Wow. Okay.
Non-kosher food, that makes sense. Let's see, a hammer, a stapler, or a pen.
Okay.
Yeah,
yeah.
like tools.
Yeah, so all of that. So you can't carry various things.
Mhm.
So, interesting.
I do know that there's like
Yeah.
a whole industry for like home automation specifically for keeping the Sabbath.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
looking at Wikipedia and there's like a whole list of inventions that have been made
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
so that you don't have to proactively activate any kind of electrical impulse on anything, but it'll
Interesting.
still work.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
everything's on timers that day and
Yes.
everything's
Yeah.
set to work.
There's an
Yeah.
elevator, a special Shabbat elevator, Shabbat microphone.
Wow.
You can set things
There's a book called Shabbat
Gosh.
for Dummies.
on a lot of modern
That's
home
good.
appliances.
Yeah.
There's a Shabbat mode.
That just like turns it off on that day or just makes the lights
seems
not light up that day? Do you know?
The mode usually overrides the usual everyday operation of the electrical appliance and makes the operation of the appliance comply with the rules of Jewish law.
okay.
That's,
I guess it'd be like the refrigerator where like the light won't come on.
yeah,
Shabbat or
something like
something.
that. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Huh, okay.
Interesting. Well, That's
or
fun.
I think with certain ovens, it allows it to maintain heat for a certain amount of time so that some things
Interesting.
can still be cooked or kept warm.
Right.
So I think
Yeah.
ideally too, if you're going to go to a temple, you'd walk, but it does say
you can't drive a car.
yeah, it does say that some Jews will use their vehicles to reach Orthodox synagogues for services.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
in practice, truly Orthodox Jews generally do not drive during the Sabbath. Fascinating.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really interesting.
Really interesting, because definitely the people that I used to go and do Shabbat with, like, they would light candles and have challah and sing, but that was about it.
Yeah.
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 And I think not work, but
Right.
not anything.
Well, there's
like,
a wide variety of practices,
Yeah.
for sure.
Right. Well, and
Absolutely.
your friends were not super traditional,
No.
like
Not super,
conservative.
like, Orthodox.
Yeah.
no, not
Jewish.
super
Yeah.
Orthodox. Yeah.
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 So you want to learn about booths?
I want to learn
Oh,
about
yeah,
booths.
booths.
And will we build some?
John
Oh,
Wilkes Booth.
No,
not that
not
booth.
that
Different
Do
booth.
not bring that booth into this conversation.
Okay.
We're talking about Sukkoth. So speaking of the Jewish calendar, this year, 2019, it will approximately fall on October 13th to the 20th.
Huh.
Is when the festival of Sukkoth will be.
Okay.
So yes, so the fundamental part of this festival, it happens right at the end of Yom Kippur that you start building the sukkah,
Right.
Oh,
which
wow.
is the hut. So you build this hut outside of your house, and it's intended that you have your meals out there, and some families
Wow.
will even sleep out there during that week-long period. And it is supposed to remind you of the really humble shelters that the Israelites would have been living in the desert. So it's supposed to kind of
Okay.
be an acknowledgement of those times. You're also supposed to gather these 4 sacred plants that was mentioned in the verses that we read. So you need to have the fruit of a citron tree, kind of like a lemon.
Okay.
A branch from a date palm tree, boughs with leaves from the myrtle tree, and branches with leaves from the willow tree. And you are supposed to bind these together and wave them around.
Oh, well, of course.
Okay,
Yes.
so a wave offering. Or,
Yes, you
or
do a wave offering.
Yeah.
You are encouraged to invite guests to the sukkah.
Okay.
Traditionally, specifically the poor, that it should be a place that the poor can come and still be fed and sheltered. A while ago I watched a really beautiful film about this called Ushpizin. Ushpizin means guests. And it was a film that was shot entirely in Jerusalem by this Jewish filmmaker, Hasidic Jewish filmmaker. The plot being about this really poor couple who are Hasidic, and they are specifically what's known as Baal Teshuvah, which are people who are Jews who lived a secular life and then decided to become Orthodox.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So that's who they are. And
And by secular, you mean, forgive my ignorance, do you
Kind of
mean,
more casual, like
is it that?
culturally Jewish?
Yes.
Because when I hear
more
the word
culturally Jewish,
secular,
like non-Orthodox Jewish.
Okay.
Yeah.
okay.
Anyway, so they're preparing for Sukkoth, and some guests arrive that are these ex-cons who know
Whoa.
the husband from before he became an Orthodox Jew,
Okay.
but he feels obligated to host them because that's what you're supposed to do.
Oh, shit.
So they stay in the sukkah with him and his wife, and the drama of the film is about the tension of that, of them kind of bringing back his sordid past, essentially.
Interesting.
Yeah, really beautiful film. I really highly recommend people check it out. It was filmed by, the filmmaker and his actual wife, who'd never acted before.
Oh, really?
In the film.
Interesting.
Yeah, it was really, really interesting. So this October, especially those of us here in Los Angeles, when you drive around, like, you can spot the sukkah, like the people set up in their
Interesting.
driveways or in their yards.
I don't think I've ever seen that before.
Now
but
that you know about it, you will notice it.
Yeah,
I can
interesting.
guarantee you will notice it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Very
cool.
Wow.
And good timing that we get to see this coming up soon.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Coming up soon in what, like
5-6 months.
6 months now.
Right. Let's see. When is?
I told you, it's October 13th to the 20th this
Okay.
year.
Okay. Got it. For some reason, I thought it was sooner than that.
No.
Yeah.
Nope, not so much.
13th to 20th. Yeah. Okay.
Anyway, thank you, Petros, for coming along on this ride of all kinds of trivia about the Jewish calendar. And we can't wait to hear from you next week.